the way I welcome people to the NHS Direct Board.
Yes.
Morning everyone, welcome to the last board of the calendar year. Today we have one item of very great importance, which is the consultation outcome discussion. So there's already been a board seminar on it, and specifically for that item we are welcoming Belinda Whitehead, Matt Fowkes and Anne Cooper from the staff side. Sandra Maxwell would be with us, but I guess she's on leave, that's right, I think she sent her apologies. So we'll be spending time on that item once we've got through our performance section of the board. I don't have any apologies for absence, except we know that Kat Noble's been caught up in the some transport problems, I think. Declarations of interest? Minutes of the previous meeting, 25th of November. I know, before we do that, actually, for a second, there's one thing I would like to say. It does come up later in the agenda, but I wanted to have the pleasure of saying it, which is that Jackie Dunn has been appointed as Director of Finance and Performance, and not a moment too soon. Her quiet confidence and personal style and her control and confidence over the numbers are something we have come to value tremendously, and we're very glad to welcome you as a formal member of the board on a permanent basis. Okay, minutes then, slightly less interesting.
I don't know. I've got a few comments in there. So
oh, good. Okay. Good. Are there any matters of accuracy in relation to the minutes of the November meeting?
No.
No. Okay. We have a small number of action points still open then, so I think we can go straight to those. Nick.
So the first item, Jackie's will report at the January meeting. The second one, the vital stats for the Care Connect service are included in the performance report. So I'm sure Ruth would be happy to answer any points. People have got questions.
Any questions? No? Okay. Then we can go straight into the performance section. So we have an outgoing chief executive report. Nick?
Yes, I mean, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity later to say things in a more meaningful way, but I just wanted to formally record my thanks on my outgoing meeting. And really with that, I was just going to pass over to Roger for the actual business of the meeting.
Fantastic. Okay. Roger, you've also submitted a report,
short report
focusing on the closure board.
Yes.
Would you like to just give us the highlights of that?
Yes, so colleagues will be aware that from the last meeting the decision had been made to form an NHS Direct closure board to oversee the next few months. Responsibility being with the TDA, and that board has been convened and had its first meeting. It's agreed its terms of reference, and actually at the first meeting there were a number of important decisions made. One was that the Speak to Advisor service as part of the digital advice service would be decommissioned. The second was to confirm that the dental nurse assessment service and complex health information and medicines inquiry services were to be decommissioned from the end of March. And the third was that NHS Direct is responsible for undertaking a public consultation on the dissolution of the trust. We've still got to do some work on what exactly that means, how long that needs to take and what form it takes. But we'll be doing some work before the next meeting of the closure board next Monday, the 23rd. So that will be a topic, an item on the agenda of the next closure board. And we may come to some conclusions about that at the next board, or we may not. So there's still a bit of work to do about what the public consultation amounts to, and I'll keep colleagues informed on the progress of that.
Thank you, Roger. Peter?
Yeah, this is very helpful. The bit I don't quite get, Roger, is the relationship between this group and us as a board.
Yes,
because I'm assuming we're still in charge.
Absolutely, we are. No, that's a very good question, and I think the key is in the word oversight. So the TDA does not make decisions, or the closure board does not make decisions about this organisation. This organisation's board makes decisions about this organisation. It's overseen now by the closure board, convened by the Trust Development Authority and with members from the Department of Health, NHS England and Public Health England. But that board acknowledges that this board still has duties to perform over the next few months.
Could I make a suggestion? You refer in your report, Roger, to the terms of reference. I think perhaps it makes sense to circulate those to members of the board. My understanding, and of course it's not something I'm going to be involved with, was that the closure board was overseeing a process, and this board is overseeing an organisation. Now that in simple terms, but I think members might find it helpful to have terms of reference.
Thank you.
I mean, it's any comfort to you, Peter. I'm today very comfortable with the state of the arrangements, and I should let our colleagues on this board know if Jackie and I weren't.
Louisa?
So I've always been a bit worried about the public consultation bit, and ever since I sort of saw a programme about a legal challenge to an organisation not having a public consultation. So it seems to me I'm surprised that it rests with us. But if that is the case, and will you be bringing something to this board that's sort of as robust as it can be about what that public consultation should look like? Because it seems to me not impossible that somebody might mount a challenge.
Yes, it is possible. The agreement that it should be us is based on legal advice, fairly detailed legal advice received by the Department of Health and presented to the first meeting of the closure board, and we've accepted that legal advice. How detailed the consultation needs to be and exactly who with is something that we need to do some work on together with the closure board. But yes, we've got to be very careful that we do it properly, and we do it for the correct period of time, and we avoid any opportunity to challenge.
And I think the fact that we have an NHS Direct Closure Board might suggest that an even more importance in being very sort of transparent about our public consultation process.
Yep.
It is rather difficult to see, I'll come to you in a second, Steve, how that process works, given that this board has taken the view on the basis of financial non-viability, and there is something called a closure board. But
that's a contingency, I suppose. Anyway.
But that's something you'll have to. Stephen and Tim.
Well, not for me to want to sort of short circuit, due process, but it just seems to be an exercise in futility. Just taking your point. So whilst I'm sure we need to make sure that we don't allow ourselves to be challenged unnecessarily. I mean, for people to do lots of work for something which is going to have no consequence.
Yeah, I think it is worth making the distinction between the operational closure of NHS Direct that this board has already agreed and is in train, and the dissolution of the trust, which is what this public consultation is about. And I think you can probably imagine that a public consultation about an organisation that has already agreed to either transfer or close its services is probably going to be a fairly straightforward process. We'll let you know if it isn't. But my expectation is that given what decisions this board has already made, it will be pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Tim.
I just wanted to mention our membership. And I'm not quite sure how. Is it 17,000? I don't know. How they are going to be in this circuit. So can you, when you address this, can you
Yes,
put in our membership as well?
Yeah.
We have already written to the members. I've written to the members.
Yes, you have.
So,
Yeah. Well, we'll do what we need to do.
I'm not sure what the right answer is.
No.
Are you suggesting that they should be part of the public consultation?
Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but we will.
We need to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Roger. Any other questions for either of your two chief executives? practice today. Special moment. Take advantage of it.
Really?
Must be a collective noun.
No, don't.
All right.
And then we want to go there.
No, don't.
Yes. Roger, do you just want to mention Ruth's comment? Is that right? Just say.
Yes, although we've not had it formally agreed, the intention is that Ruth seconds to the Trust Development Authority as the project director of the NHS Direct Closure Board, and that she does that full time from the 1st of January for 3 months until the 31st of March. We've still got to complete the formal agreements around the secondment arrangements, but that's certainly our and the TDA's intention.
Fine. Thank you. Should we go on to the performance package? Jackie, you'll do the same excellent job you have been doing wearing your new tie.
Thank you. So in terms of the corporate scorecard, so still have that on my logo, I have to change that.
Oh yes, you must.
Thank you. In terms of the scorecard, this is the last scorecard with all of the 111 services because it's a scorecard in November and we still have 111 services working. So nothing to be particularly to report. Pleased to be able to move to amber now the actions arising from complaints action plans, now moved to 93%, only just narrowly missing the target. So I noticed it still has a downward arrow saying it's got worse, but actually it's improved significantly since last month. So well done to Tricia and her team for that. Other than that, nothing really worthy of note on that scorecard. The as requested last time, the scorecard for the digital health and advice services for Care Connect now does include some information that was requested on the volumes for the Care Connect service. Now on the DHAS page 13 and 14, if anybody has any coverage. As we said last time, the volumes are low. But the board asked for a little bit more information. And the other ones worthy of note is the 111 national overview of the week ending the 1st of December when we didn't have any other services. We've just got a section at the top of the services that have transferred from ourselves. And I'm pleased to say that all of the services are still performing for our services. Anything else to report today? Any questions?
I just wanted to thank the team for the information about Care Connect. And there is a striking misalignment between the capacity which we've been commissioned to provide and the actual demand for calls. I think there's potentially a learning in that, possibly not for us just as a supplier of the overcapacity, but for the planning process. And it does, I think, potentially call into question how important this is going to be in the immediate future, unless it's handled in a slightly different way and perhaps promoted more actively in the organisations where it's gone live. Any other questions on performance, which looks to be very much in control? Okay. Finance now.
So the finance report is looking healthier than it was last month because we've now brought into account the 5.3 million which had previously been declared for the underspending in Q1. So we have a deficit of 14.8 million, and that's our very favourable variance against the plan of about 2.2 million. So at the moment we are well on track to achieve the forecast outturn of 21 million. I wouldn't like to say it's going to be less than that at this stage because the income is still the area which remains at risk.
Steve?
Thank you. Is the 2.2 bankable or is that phasing?
So it's bankable because if you recall our target or the budget that the board approved was for a 26 million deficit, and we're now heading for a 21 million deficit largely because of the transfers of 111 services.
Okay.
So
So very good news. Assuming all that income comes through, which is still the point that we're all talking through about too.
Jackie, you may want to repeat our brief conversation about the range on the financial outturn and whether there's any change in the range.
yeah, so I think we reported the range, whilst we're forecasting 24, the range does go from somewhere about 15 million up to 13 million, and the deficit, and that range is still in place largely because of the uncertainty in need.
Okay.
We wouldn't want to change that range. Although we do have processes in place to escalate any income that we don't receive. We can't say what the outcomes are going to be.
Okay. And I imagine you're watching that extremely carefully.
Extremely carefully.
Okay.
And we can't resolve it, we'll go through the closure phase.
All right. So there's a mechanism. Fine. Any other questions on the financial performance? All right. Thank you. So now we're in the performance section, and we're on to the section which has been known as strategy. The significant item here is the one I referred to right at the beginning of the meeting, which is the outcome of the staff consultation exercise. So we're pleased to have staff side here able to represent the staff and the employees, and we'll be inviting you to speak. Roger, I wonder whether you would like to choreograph this section of the meeting. Would that be sensible?
Yes, I'll make a few opening remarks, and then I'll hand over to staff side colleagues for them to address the board. And I'm not going to go through this report in any detail, mainly because most colleagues around the table are familiar with its contents, because most of us attended a board seminar last Wednesday, at which most of the issues that are in the report were addressed. It's in three sections. The first is the process of consultation, which I think colleagues agreed last Wednesday had been sound. We'd had the right number of meetings, the right number of one-to-ones. We'd had a collective consultation group meeting every week, which is the formal basis of the consultation, and the consultation closed on Friday at 5 o'clock. The second section was the most complex section, because it was an account of exactly where we were up to with each of the services, particularly those services that we're going to transfer, and that is repeated in the report, and I won't go into that in any detail. And then the third section is the next steps, really. So what do we do after today? And I think probably that is worth dwelling on in a little more detail. Because as a result of today's board meeting, if this paper is approved, quite a number of our colleagues in NHS Direct are put at risk of redundancy. That we will do in one email over the next couple of days, and then we'll have a pause until most of the redundancy notices, which will be effective from the 6th of January. That is exactly 12 weeks from the 31st of March, so that most people who are going to be made redundant will then become redundant on the 31st of March. And of course, we will be continuing to deliver services up to midnight on the 31st of March. There may be a small number of people who leave before then, because there isn't work for them to do, and then there's a slightly bigger number who will continue either in this organisation or possibly seconded to another organisation in order to complete decommissioning activities, so to complete the annual report and accounts, to close the sites, to do the ICT and data decommissioning, and pass on our legacy data to a successor body, which we think is a kind of records agency within the Department of Health, although that hasn't been confirmed yet. and so we are in the process of putting the plans together to make all that work over the next 3 to 6 months. So apart from that, I'll certainly take any questions and from colleagues before I pass on to my staff side colleagues. There were just a couple of things that I wanted to mention, because we sent the report to our colleagues on the NHS Director Closure Board, and NHS England have come back with a couple of comments that I just wanted to mention to this meeting. The first was in relation to paragraphs 3.4 and 3.5, which is where I confirm the decommissioning decisions around the dental assessment service and complex health information and medicines inquiry service. NHS England wanted us to make clear that this service was initially planned for closure at the end of March 2013 and was only retained to mitigate a risk that local arrangements within 111 had not been put in place. So they just wanted to make that clear. That's not in my report. I don't intend to add it to the report, but it's just a point that NHS England wanted to make. And I think the other one that they were concerned about was the impression that we might have given in the report that all the late decisions about commissioning were their late decisions about commissioning, and particularly in the Speak to Advisor service, they wanted to make clear that there were issues around compliance with the provider that was originally going to take the Speak to Advisor service, and they just wanted to make it clear that it wasn't entirely their responsibility that these commissioning decisions were made so late. So I've said I was very happy to convey that into the meeting. It may or may not be our view of things, but I felt it important that they were able to state that. Other than that, I'll take any questions before I pass on to my staff side colleagues.
I'd like to make a few comments, Roger, at this point. I mean, I'd like to say that it is a deeply regrettable outcome and has been, I think we have serious criticisms to make of the process in the sense of the uncertainty which we've had to ask our staff to endure. And I need to say a couple of things. One is that the Herculean efforts that have been made by the team in this organisation to get clarity as soon as possible and to convey that. Secondly is the constructive approach of the staff side and the staff in dealing with that uncertainty, which I think is very strongly intolerable, to be honest. And without attributing blame to any particular actor, I think it is deeply regrettable that those decisions have been made at the time that they have, so late in the day, and that in particular some of this very special expertise that this organisation has won't be available for the future. So I think we were reconciled a while ago to the organisation not continuing into the future. That's a different thing from the services, and it is very sad indeed to see some of these services down. And in particular, the late decision, it is very late for the people involved, on the Speak to Advisor is, in my personal view, a retrograde step for users who go through our digital interactive symptom assessment tools and then don't have dedicated nurses to speak to. I think that is a service which had enormous value and will probably be recreated at some point, because it is certainly the direction of travel for other industries, and one that customers really value. So that's my personal view. I'd like to ask the board if they have any comments or questions before we invite the staff side to continue. So just now before you ask
I agree.
All of the above.
So, welcome again. Have you decided what order you'd like to speak in?
Yes.
Linda, you're going to go first?
Yes.
Fine.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you, Joanne, for your comments that you just made about the service. So, joint staff side are disappointed that the transfer of the Trust's 111 services, which accounted for the substantial majority of the Trust's secured income beyond March 2014, and has therefore compromised the future of the Trust as a viable independent organisation. Roger communicated early to staff side before the commencement of the consultation that our commissioners are all in agreement that the DHAS services that we currently provide is of great value to patients. And that was on the 29th of August. Clearly, NHS England do not share the views of NHS Direct, and it would seem we've even been unsuccessful in our ability to persuade them of this fact, even now. The overall situation was under discussion until the 10th of December. Therefore, we'd also like to inform you of our dissatisfaction in the delay of communicating this to our members. We recognise this is not directly related to the lengthy discussion with NHS England. Sorry, it is directly related and not NHS Direct. It cannot be overstated how frustrating and disappointed members and colleagues feel about this situation. NHS Direct has engaged with staff during the consultation by having site and telephone presentations and meetings with staff and staff side. Information has regularly been posted on the intranet, including minutes of meetings and questions and answers. There's been site visits by board execs and staff side with information posted in the news shot. NHS Direct has directly engaged with staff side with weekly CCG meetings plus a weekly communique. This has enabled discussions to take place between management and staff side and demonstrates partnership working, which we're grateful for.
Management and staff side representatives came to an agreement at ACAS on the 6th of March 2013 to resolve the ongoing dispute relating to banding of frontline posts. This had the effect of revitalising the existing job evaluation process in partnership in time for a full evaluation of all new jobs in future NHS Direct. Now at the end of the consultation, it is worth noting that over 40 posts have been reassessed or desktoped significantly. The jobs related are from the disputed frontline posts and those posts which took it to the ambulance trust. This therefore contributed to the success of those transitions. This is a notable achievement and is an example of successful partnership working. NHS Direct were finally able to announce a more detailed and definitive statement on the latest position on the proposals for specific NHS Direct services and those staff who remain employed at sites. However, the biggest cohort is the home working cohort. The Digital Health Assessment and Speak to Advisor Service is a quote from NHS England. The Commission of the Digital Assessment and Speak to Advisor Service has decided to continue to commission the Digital Assessment Service, DAS, but has decided to decommission the Speak to Advisor Service. Frontline Speak to Advisor nurses and employees who work directly for the Speak to Service will be put at risk of redundancy this week. This is most disappointing and unexpected news, considering the optimistic reassurances we as a group received when making the choice to home work at the end of last consultation and throughout this consultation period. National staff side have consistently supported the home working model of working, and despite the undoubted problems we have experienced re the IT and telephony, etc., we have no reason to believe that any new provider of the digital health advice service would not realise the value to patients of having the ability to speak to experienced senior nurse advisors. National staff side have been and still are disappointed that DNAS and Chimes from the beginning of this consultation have not been valued enough for to be recommissioned. This decision will almost certainly result in the public's inability to access already stretched NHS resources for their ongoing care, and is a sad loss of the expertise of these well-informed cohort of staff. National staff side are saddened by the loss of a great number of backroom and support staff jobs at a time when seeking new employment is becoming increasingly difficult. National staff side, however, are pleased that some employment has been preserved for tupiable staff, mainly Care Connect, Healthy Change, telephony and repeat caller service, NFPS and the appointments line. For more detailed reference to DNAS and Chimes home working and the job evaluation work, please see the separate papers presented at the board seminar. In closing, we would just add that there are a number of nurses who, due to caring responsibilities and disabilities, will find it difficult acquiring employment, as we are sure the Equality Impact Assessment will highlight.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. And although the fate of Chimes and the DNAS services has been known and more certain of outcome throughout this consultation process, we as a staff side would like to formally register our disappointment that these services will cease operation by the 31st of March next year. It is our belief these services have been and continue to be undervalued by the commissioning authorities at NHS England, and that these services could potentially fill a gap that exists in the current specification for 111 service delivery across England. Chimes and DNAS were rescued at the 11th hour in November of last year due to an uncertainty on the part of NHS England as to how well these services historically provided by NHS Direct were covered under the specification for 111. The results were supplied to us about the estimated contact demand, and on that basis, plus an assessment that both health information and dental are sufficiently covered under the current 111 model, the decision has been taken to close these valuable services. We feel that this has been manifestly unfair to both services, as the estimated contact demand was calculated at a period when demand for both services was anemic, and that the current model only addresses health information from the viewpoint of locations of care and does not link up at all well to the emergency dental services. A further shame is that the specification for 111 will shortly be up for re-evaluation and revamping, but any potential expansion of the 111 specification will come too late to help these services avoid closure and the loss of staff in these cohorts. The value of the dental service we have historically provided is proven in the current trends. Taking the period between the 5th of August and the 27th of October this year, the dental problem pathway calls accounted for about 9% of calls to 111. This equating to 24,630 calls, which was over 4,000 more calls than for any other single pathway in 111, and the single biggest reason why the public are contacting 111. Over the same period, we have often seen our dental nurses starved of calls, thus showing how disconnected and disjointed the linkages have been between the dental nurse advisory service and 111, and the gulf between the 111 entry portal and the actual emergency dental service providers. The linkage between Chimes and 111 has been better established from the start due to our participation in the 111 health information pilot schemes, but Chimes has also had problems in giving its best in recent times. Continued innovation has meant that Chimes has adopted the Adastra system relatively late in the day. This required a new health directory, new methods of working and bedding in of the new system, which has been inevitably subject to teething troubles. Also, the whole cohort needed to retrain to use new systems and tools effectively, and similar radical changes were required for the new model of online inquiries provided by Chimes staff. All of this took time to implement effectively, and there are still troubles every so often, notably with medicines calls where the quirks of the system can make these calls fiddly and time consuming from a documentation standpoint. Thus, we are left with a situation where even though the call volumes are picking up very markedly in the online inquiries, the services will close down by the 31st of March next year through no fault of the staff working on these services. While it is appreciated that senior management have made overtures to 111 providers local to the retained service sites, these are met with a lack of goodwill and long-term thinking. This will result in the post being made redundant, with the concurrent loss of skill and expertise of very dedicated staff. The only crumb of comfort has been the decision by NHS England not to wind up these services early to coincide with the end of the 0845 contingency in February 2014. This is, boldly put, a tragedy, not only for the dedicated staff in both cohorts, but also for the public who will have little alternative except to rely once again on the more acute areas of the wider NHS for their queries and concerns, which, as the University of Sheffield reported to the 111 delivery model indicated, is only going to place an additional burden on acute services in the NHS at a time when they are already struggling. It will also mean that clinical advisor resources will be diverted from delivering nursing and clinical advice, as word from other 111 providers has been that they have been using their clinical staff to deliver health information. Whilst the level of engagement through this consultation has been broadly welcomed by health information and dental nurse advisory staff, the fact that it's only served really to rubber stamp the fate of these services does not sit well, especially as our primary goal as a staff side has been to continues to be preservation of employment.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, all of you. I think that, it's clear, I hope, to you all and to the people you represent, how far this organisation shares your frustration and disappointment. I'd like to ask Nick to provide a response, and then other members of the board will, and then I'll round things up.
Okay, so firstly, just to say I agree with the three different but equally eloquent statements that the three of you have made. I think we round the board table very much share your concerns about the impact of the outcome of this consultation on services for patients, on staff, and on jobs. So to say that it's a disappointing outcome, I think is an understatement that we would share with you. However, I'm going to be sort of cup half full. This board looked at the evidence from a variety of statements made from Bruce Keogh, for NHS England, from Monitor, from the Health Select Committee, and from the University of Sheffield, all of which concluded that there really is a consensus that telephone and web advice and support for patients seeking NHS services have an increasing part to play. And I think that's something that we would all share. And I think what that means is that together with their second conclusion, which is that 111 requires significant development in order to play its full part and achieve its potential. And I think when you put those things together, what it means that I think is that staff who have these skills and expertise that they've gained through NHS Direct will find increasingly that what they have to offer is valued by the NHS more broadly, and that hopefully in the years to come, the NHS will accept that the use of the telephone and internet and mobile technology is something that is part and parcel of day-to-day delivery, and not something that a strange organisation called NHS Direct that's not from around here does. And I hope that will mean that whilst it might be short-term pain for staff, that their skills will be valued in the future. Can I just pick up a couple of other more detailed points? The thing amongst the disappointment that we've expressed, I just wanted to highlight, because I think it's the most acutely disappointing thing, is that the only truly integrated multi-channel service is being decommissioned. And lest there should be any doubt, there was an organisation willing and able to take that service on, but a decision was made that was not going to be pursued. And I regard that as regrettable in the extreme. And I don't quite understand why that decision was taken. And then the final point I wanted to make was, you made a point, Belinda, in your statement about the fact that 111 transfers, the fact that those transfers had taken place, undermined the financial viability of NHS Direct. And I just wanted to put my perspective on that, which is that I don't think the transfer in itself undermined the financial viability of the organisation. It was the amount of money that commissioners were willing to pay for 111 services that made those services non-viable. And this is a personal opinion rather than one that the board has come to. But I believe that it is and was impossible for NHS Direct to provide the 111 service within the amount of money that commissioners set aside. And that was true from the outset, and not something that subsequently developed. So there was never any chance that NHS Direct would have been able to provide those services on a financially viable basis, based on the conditions that commissioners set in the tenders. As I say, that's a personal view. What that means is that the transfers were inevitable, given that financial envelope was not going to change, and that NHS Direct therefore had no choice but to ensure the continuity of services and the employment of staff on an ongoing basis through transferring the services. So forgive me for ending on a slightly controversial note, but that, as I say, is a personal view and not one I'm expressing on behalf of the board.
Okay, I'll want to come back on that, but before I do, I'd like to throw it open for the board. Peter.
Just a few things from me. I just wanted to reflect the very wise words that the three of you gave to us earlier. The issue for me is that all the people that have worked in NHS Direct have got special skills and knowledge and understanding. In the particular areas you talked about, then that is even more, shall we say, focused type of skills. But you'll be interested to know, because I come from West Sussex and I'm a local county councillor and have responsibilities for adult services and health. Now, one of the things that's happening on the ground is integration of services. So health, the voluntary sector, and our social care colleagues are bringing services together, particularly for those who are frail elderly and long-term conditions. Now, I said to myself when I was looking at this change, wouldn't it be good if the front door started with advice and support to people in a more thorough way, so that when the teams are actually working with individuals on the ground, they've already got some plans and purpose in the way that their future is being organised. And sadly, that isn't the way it is, but I think that will come eventually, particularly with my public health colleagues in local government who can see the value of that sort of work and that sort of arrangement. So there is some hope, I believe. I'm sadly not seen at the moment, but there is some hope locally for us reinventing all of this again. I find it very strange to sit here because what is national is not seen as being acceptable, what's local is. So, you know, that was the problem. Too much national, not enough local, perhaps, I don't know. But so I just wanted to make that clear. The second thing was just to say, Roger and your colleagues and the staff side have worked so tirelessly together and have made what has been a heartbreaking circumstance at least tolerably in terms of the way it's operated and the way you've developed and the relationship points. So I mean, I know this is heartbreaking, but that to me is key, and I'm sure that will continue on as well. So I'm very regretful about all of this, as everyone is, but so I think there is some hope for the future. That's really what I was saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Tim?
I think that we should take the opportunity of thanking you for coming and thanking all your colleagues, because throughout this period of uncertainty we have continued to provide a safe set of services which are performing largely to the parameters that we set. So I don't think you should go away from this meeting without somebody saying that to you. So I think all my colleagues would support that. So we set out, whatever was going on, to continue to provide a safe set of value services, and we have done that, and we must continue to do that. So thank you from me, but I'm sure the board will support me.
Indeed. So,
yes, I think that the paper is very clear. It's a very complex consultation, and I appreciate the partnership working that we've had from the staff side. The question I have really is, could you give us a sense, Roger, of the numbers of people that are going to be affected as a result of the outcome, and what actually, just in round terms, how many will be transferring to other organisations, and how many will be put at risk as a result of this?
Yeah, it's not a question we have a complete answer to, of course, because and I think it is particularly worth dwelling on the fact that although just under 200 colleagues will not be put at risk after this consultation, because there is the prospect of transfer to another organisation. Of course, whether their employment continues beyond the point of transfer is very dependent on the plans of the the new provider. So to take an example to illustrate the point, our appointments line colleagues work out of Chatham, Hedge End, and Milton Keynes, and we don't know what the plans of the new provider are. And what we're really hoping for is that they retain Milton Keynes and possibly one of the other sites, but we're pretty certain that they won't retain all three. So although about 180 colleagues won't be put at risk, that does not mean that all 180 will continue in employment beyond the transfer. The other number I think it's just worth dwelling on now is that about just over 500 employees are going to be put at risk as a result of this consultation. So that is also a significant number, and of course they come from right across the organisation now, because it includes all our remaining managers, specialists, support staff, back office staff, as well as some frontline staff as well. So those are the numbers in broad terms. We've still got about 760 people who work for us. 60 odd of those are on deferred redundancy, so they automatically become redundant, and just over 500 will be at risk, and just under 200 will not be put at risk, but not all of those will transfer. So those
Thank you.
in broad terms is where we,
those numbers are helpful.
sit, yeah.
I mean, they show into stark relief what this thing means in human terms.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to say anything? So I have a few more things I'd like to say. Okay. Nick, picking up on your point, I think I wanted to take it forward. Rather than looking backwards, I think it remains to be seen whether anybody in the health economy can deliver 111 to the numbers that are in those contracts. We don't know. It's not transparent, and it's highly likely that will never be known. But it's a serious question about whether money that's being spent propping up 111 service could not perhaps have been better spent maintaining some of the multi-channel added value services that this organisation provides. Not exclusively, but this organisation has done. I'd like to thank you for coming to echo Tim's words, coming to talk to us. I think it's a great credit to everybody involved that despite this extraordinarily difficult situation, you've managed to preserve the positive relationships, and it was very pleasing to hear from your side that you appreciate what people on the other side of the table have tried to do. I think, Anne, some of the things you said, that was very helpful. I think, Matt, I very much agree with you, some of the things you said about these skills will be needed in the future, but too late for the people involved. And I think we're all feeling that, and that's why this is so sad. But thank you again for coming. I think the board is clear on the outcome of the consultation. Roger, would you like to sum up what the next steps are going to be? Louisa, did you want to?
I just want to say something, yeah. I mean, just because I think, I thought it's very interesting, the dental stuff. And I think that's really interesting. And I think what it sort of highlighted to me is, I mean, for a start, and I think, the way that people who work for NHS Direct have always sort of spoken about the service, and also sort of problem solve. So it's not just the kind of service, it is the people behind that service, and the sort of philosophy of always sort of striving and problem solving and working together, and really thinking about what you're doing to deliver. So yes, these services, it's impossible to see how they can't be replicated. You can't have loads of people with toothache turning up at A&E. You can't have people with mental health problems doing the same. The world is changing, and it's in such a retrograde step to to sort of put the brakes on, to service some sort of localist sort of need. So I suppose that that's one of the things I think is so sad, is that collective knowledge, that sort of real sort of striving for excellence I think staff here have always had in the face of real sort of adversity. I think it shines through that at this incredibly sort of heartbreaking moment, that you present a case that's very powerful but very restrained, well argued. And I just wanted to say that, 'cause I think if I hadn't, it would have sort of bothered me going forward.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I think the points you made about why it is that the measurement and the information that the decommissioning decisions were based on, we assume, was not truly reflective of the value of those services because of particular moments in time and the way in which the patient journey had been fractured by the new 111 service. So I think every way you look at it, we're looking at the destruction of value for the system as a whole, as well as paying for the staff involved. Okay, Roger.
Yeah. So just to repeat the next steps, then really, what happens from now is really that the staff group divides in two to some degree. There is a significant number of people who are put at risk of redundancy this week. And then most of those people will receive redundancy notices at the beginning of next month, and most people will leave on the 31st of March. And then there are a series of discrete groups of staff who will go into consultations to transfer under 2P regulations, and they will start also probably sometime in January. We're going to keep meeting in partnership on very much the same sort of basis than we have during the consultation, actually, certainly every fortnight, so that we work through this thing together. And there's just one point that was brought up in one of the presentations that I'd like to address, and that is the equality impact assessment. Because of the late decision making on some of the commissioning decisions, we haven't completed the full equality impact assessment. We'll do that by the end of the year, and what it will undoubtedly show is that we do have significant groups of colleagues with protected characteristics in the home worker population, because that's why they do it.
Yes.
And so we'll have to think of how we are going to support that group of people, a lot of whom will want to continue working but have things like mobility issues, and we'll have to work through what sort of career management support we can give those people over the next few months so that they can get the same offer as everybody else and get the same opportunity to move to the next stage of their career. So I just wanted to make that that point. And we will start by communicating with everybody the decisions that the board has made today.
Okay,
So
thank you,
Chair.
Roger. Okay, I think we've done that one. We should then move on to the governance and compliance section of the agenda, starting with the board assurance framework and the risk register. Alan.
Thank you very much, Chair. There aren't a great number of changes on this updated version of the board assurance framework. It's only 2 weeks since the last review at the November board meeting. The most significant change is that we have now removed the risks related to the delivery and transfer of 111 services for reasons that we've already discussed, as the services were transferred on time during the course of November. And therefore the remaining higher residual risks are, as one would expect, delivering the financial plan in spite of the good news that Jack has given as far as November's performance is concerned, and also the safe transfer of the remaining services that are commissioned beyond the end of this current financial year, which clearly most of the focus will turn to now alongside the decommissioning of the organisation. So on that note, I'm happy to take questions, but not a great deal of updates since the last meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions for Alan? No? Okay, thank you. That was very clear, Alan. Corporate governance manual?
That's me as well, yes, thank you very much. This is an even quicker item. The review of the corporate governance manual was actually reported back by Tim verbally at the last meeting following the Finance Committee meeting in November. But according to the Trust's scheme of delegation, this is one of the reserved decisions that the board must take to hopefully approve and adopt the revised version. The changes are largely cosmetic in nature to reflect the revised structures introduced earlier on in the year, and therefore we chose not, in the interests of the environment, to print 126 sheets for each member of the board. We sent it electronically instead,
I have, however, a copy here. Anyone who's keen enough to want to take it away, with track changes on it, but it's just here for the board, hopefully to rubber stamp today.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or challenge to the review and the changes being made to the corporate governance manual?
It reflects the not just the cosmetic changes, but also a centralisation of decision making over resources. Is that correct?
It doesn't affect that because
It doesn't. Okay.
What we will be doing, because the standing orders and SFIs do say that we have authorised signatories and they're delegated by the Chief Executive.
Okay, so it's executive action that's doing that.
We may be reviewing
right.
the level of limits in the new year.
Okay.
So even less reason to challenge the text of the corporate governance manual. I think we can say that those have been accepted. Thank you
very much.
Alan. Thank you, Jackie. Okay. Last time we had brief feedback from the Finance Committee. We now have the minutes. Are there any questions on those? No. All right. We're now into stakeholder activity, which is where we talk about engagement with the staff and the patient experience. Ruth, I'm told you've been to Bristol. I'm sure other people have been to other places, but I don't know if you wanted to say anything about how things are in Bristol.
So I visited before the Chimes decision was confirmed, and also before we had effectively all of the decisions. I have to say, I'd just like to reiterate the comments that other board members have made, that it is astounding the commitment of our staff right to the end, and their willingness to just trust us to do the right thing and to fight their corner. So that was really compelling, and just, I think, frustration at what they felt the decisions were going to be, and the loss of service to the public, given that they are the people who speak to the public every day and understand how much the service is valued.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruth. Okay. I think we're all recognising how committed the staff have been at every site, obviously not just Bristol. And what they're committed to is the public, really, and their professional standards in the job that they do. Okay, so as usual, we have a couple of opportunities to listen to the experience of our patients. This time we had one health information call and one dental call. It's an odd time to be reviewing calls. I think it's partly about demonstrating that the board still thinks, as our staff clearly do, that the experience of every patient who calls us is important, and every patient deserves a high quality service. So I think it is important to do it. Tricia, would you like to introduce the calls?
Yes, thank you, Chair. These two calls demonstrate what is good about our Chimes and dental and health information services, and the value that patients put on these services. During these two calls, it's evident the staff clearly demonstrate their personal professional standards, how they value the role they have and the role they undertake. And I think it's clear from both of those calls as well that the patient, our customer, actually values the service that has been offered to them. The first call was a lady with some dental problems who'd actually rang the 111 service and had been signposted to our DNAS service. Our dental nurse undertook an assessment, gave some supporting care advice to do with how to manage your dental pain, did give the caller a number of options of other services to ring. She did say, in her view, she felt it was an urgent requirement. In actual fact, the patient didn't access emergency services over the course of the weekend. She undertook the advice that had been given by the dental nurse and managed her pain over the course of the weekend. And saw her own GP, her own dentist the next working week. And during her feedback, the patient actually clearly states how she valued the opportunity to have that conversation and assessment with the dental nurse, and the additional care advice she was given. The second call is related to a patient who had had some symptoms of diarrhea, who had been overseas and had an unusual experience on holiday and come back with said symptoms. She'd actually rang her GP and was advised what steps to take, but for me it was evident hadn't been given enough information on her main concern, which was could she pass on her symptoms to family members, both of them being vulnerable. One had a long-term condition and the other family member was pregnant, so she evidently didn't want to pass on any symptoms and wanted to understand what measures she could take to prevent passing on said symptoms. Our health information advisor gave some very clear instructions, again helped the patient on a journey to understand what measures she needed to take, and also signposted her to a number of websites where she could further read the information for herself and come back should she have any further questions. And I think it's again just reinforcing all of the comments that have been said around the board table, and particularly Matt's comments earlier on, in that these have been services that have been highly valued by the customers, the patients that use those services.
Thanks, Tricia. Nick,
Can I hammer in a nail?
go on. You can use my gavel if you're very good.
So I'm just interested in the health information call, because clearly one of the things that we've heard is that the health information service, the Chime service, is being decommissioned on the basis that 111 will provide the service instead. What is the likely outcome? I know it's slightly difficult to speculate, but likely outcome had this patient, this caller, telephoned 111?
They would have gone through, been offered an initial assessment with the symptoms she'd been experiencing, and she would probably have been signposted back to her GP. Right. And so she'd taken that step in the first place. She'd already rang the
That's
GP.
what I think too. So I'm sure she would have received a symptomatic assessment that, and in view of the fact that she'd already seen her GP, she probably would have been given reassurance and self-care advice, and that might have included hand washing and hygiene and the other things. But her specific questions about whether this could be passed on to others may well not have been addressed, and I just wanted to point that out really, hence hammering in the nail.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Tricia, for organising those calls and giving us the opportunity to have a first-hand experience of what our patients are getting from those important services, with again great regret that they're not going to continue. Okay, does anybody have any other business that they would like to inform me of? No? All right. We're...
No.
That was decisive.
You're very welcome to put... But I have an item of any other business, I suppose. But I'm really sorry. So this is my last meeting as chair of NHS Direct. I have been with the organisation nearly 10 years, and my official term of office as chair finishes at the end of the month. I wanted to make a formal statement and then say a few less formal things. So the formal statement I wanted to make is the one that I made to the press in our press release in October, when we were clear about the future of the organisation. So what I said, which I still believe to be important and worth saying, is that the closure of NHS Direct marks the end of its 15 years of continuous innovation, during which time it and we have led the world in remote health assessment, advice and information. I personally have found it a huge privilege to have been part of this journey, and I'm looking back over my 10 years with NHS Direct with gratitude and respect to the staff at all levels who have created what I believe to be an exceptional service. So I'm looking forward to seeing some other organisations take forward a number of the services that NHS Direct has developed, although not nearly as many as we had hoped. And I wish those organisations and the staff whose expertise underpins the services well, as they move forward and exploit the ever-growing reach and power of technology to provide value to patients and the NHS. And I think those things remain true. For me personally, it's been a fantastic experience, I have to say. I've learned a great deal. I've discovered that leadership is a team sport, and I've had a fantastic team to work with. The team that supported the board and several generations of that team over the time that I've been here have provided a really excellent service. The team that have helped us project and disseminate our board meetings to the wider world through the web. And thank you very much for all of that support that we've had. The executive team who have run this organisation so well, the non-executive team who have provided exceptional objective advice and support and guidance, and Nick, the Chief Executive, whose service has been incomparable, I think. I am very happy to be handing on the organisation to an intact board, essentially, chaired by Sue and Chief Executive, led by, on the executive side, Roger. I know they're going to do a fantastic job. I know that they're going to, with the support of you all, guide this organisation to a safe conclusion within the financial envelope that you've been given. I wish you all the very best with that. I feel that as an organisation we were ahead of our time. We were doing things that were not recognised as the value that they had was not fully recognised by the system. I think it will be, but that will be too late for many of us. Our time, we were ahead of our time will come, but we won't be here to see it. As Nick has said, many of us, I believe, have acquired very special skills in being with the organisation, and hopefully some of those will be used in the future. And I wish you all the very best in taking that forward.
Joanne. We're obviously going to get an opportunity to go into this more this evening, but just on behalf of the board, I'd like to formally record and publicly acknowledge the immense contribution that you have given to this organisation over the last 10 years. Initially as non-exec director, and last 6 years as chair?
Yeah, 5.5, I think.
5.5 years as chair.
Like Jackie, I acted for a long time.
Your hand on the tiller has always been very sure and very certain, and it has needed to be to navigate this organisation through some very stormy waters, certainly over the last few years. It's a measure of the enormous respect that everybody around this table and in the organisation feels for you. That hand has rarely had to be anything other than a light touch to achieve changes in direction necessary to guide us through and take us to the position that we need to get to. That respect, I think, is engendered by at least 3 or 4 things I'd like to highlight. First, it's a recognition of the intellectual rigour and emotional intelligence that you bring to any of the issues that have faced this organisation. It's part of your unwavering belief in the value of remotely delivered healthcare in the digital age, value and potential of that. It's a recognition of the openness and transparency with which you've always conducted the board, and I guess no better demonstrated by the fact that we record and stream these meetings publicly for all to see. And the final one, probably most importantly for me, is the way that you have always put patients first. Everything you do is driven by the need to think about what the patient's experience is, how they feel, and I think that's partly demonstrated by the fact that we have at every board listened to patient recordings. But for me, in my interaction with you, it's always been around how we've dealt with complaints and the openness with which we have made sure that we have acknowledged when we've done things not to the best, and never allowed ourselves to be distracted by legalese about and saying that we can't do something and recognising that because of the legal position. So we wish you all well in the future. I look forward to saying a little bit more this evening, and I guess from my perspective you're going to be a hard act to follow.
Thank you. Then I think I mean, that's very touching. I don't really quite know what to say about that, except perhaps that I think you don't really get to know people properly until you've worked with them through adversity, and this team has been stress tested to the utmost degree and it's held together. And I'll miss it. I think then that brings to an end this public meeting of NHS Trust Board, and we will take a short break and have a private session. Thank you, everyone.